The story begins as we see a city in chaos, and the evil Break King watches from his fortress above, but the Kizuna Rangers arrive to stop him. They summon their Kizuna beasts, which combine together to form the Maximum Kaiser, and they charge at the fortress. The Break King fires countless lasers at them, but they're able to cut their way through, and they smash the fortress's skull, but they get hit in the process and lose an arm. They realize they can't continue, but they entrust their leader Red to finish the job, and as the others fall down, he continues into the fortress and confronts the Break King. He mocks the power of the Rangers' bonds, telling Red he's all alone, but he explains that he's fighting with the belief and trust of his friends. The Break King blasts him with his lasers, but he manages to endure it, and he lands a devastating blow, which causes a massive explosion. As he falls from the sky, he notes that he's satisfied, because even though he didn't get a happy ending, he was able to give everyone hope for the future. But before he hits the ground, he suddenly gets teleported to another world. After 6 months, we see 2 adventurers trying to fight a golem, but they realize that they don't stand a chance, which disappoints a girl named Yidra, who calls them useless. She orders the golem to stop, and the adventurers are angry because she's looking down on them, but she tells the golem to take them outside. As she looks at a painting of her father, she promises to regain the position of royal scepter, and her butler Poseidon mentions that she has another adventurer to test. She thinks he'll be as useless as the others, but Poseidon tells her that he has made a name for himself in only 6 months. She hopes he isn't a coward like the one she just saw, but she's suddenly sent flying as Red starts fighting the golem. He tells her to escape, while he holds back the golem, saying it kidnaps people, but he's shocked when she tells him it's her familiar, which she uses to test adventurers. It continues to attack him, and he recalls that something was mentioned about it in the contract, so he thinks his test has already started. He uses his bracelet to summon his suit, which shocks Yidra because she doesn't sense any mana from it, so she knows that it isn't a magic tool. She doesn't understand how he can transform in an instant without using any magic, but she calms herself down so that she can analyze him. He uses his fire punch to attack the golem, blowing it up, so she tells him he has passed the test. After that, Red tells them he's from another world, and Yidra believes him because she knows that he has extraordinary powers. She notes that there's plenty of information about otherworlders, and there are claims that the hero who sealed away the Demon Queen was one of them. She asks him to explain his weird outfit, but he's surprised that she doesn't like it because the kids in his world love it. She notes that she's willing to accept that he's from another world, so she thinks they should discuss the job, and she tells him to collect mana metal from the Wakenark ruins. Poseidon explains that it's a newly discovered ore, which crystallizes under a strange power when the mana that flows along the ley lines bursts from the ground. She mentions that she needs to study the mana metal so that she can find out if it can be used in magic, saying the royal family needs to know about it if it's dangerous. Red realizes that she protects the bond between people and magic, which excites him. So he jumps out the window, transforming into his suit, saying they should find the mana metal as soon as possible. He summons a turbo huddle, and she tells him to stop summoning strange items, saying he has become a bigger mystery than the mana metal. But he grabs onto her and flies away using the turbo huddle. They reach the ruins, and Red notes that they were able to get there quickly because they didn't run into any monsters. But she tells him he smashed past 3 of them, saying the giant birds they encountered were actually monsters. They enter the ruins, where they're attacked by monsters, so Yidra uses her ice magic to freeze them, while Red uses his spinning double blade to take them out. He takes out his marriage beam gun and uses different modes to attack the monsters, causing them to explode. But she's confused about his strange weapons, and she mentions that since his attacks made the monsters explode, it also destroyed the items they dropped. He calls the monsters weak, and she wonders who he fought in his previous world. So he reveals that his opponent was the Secret Society of Relationship Enders, which was an organization with the goal of conquering the world and stealing people's bonds. He and his friends formed a group called the Kizuna Five to fight them, but Yidra thinks his explanation doesn't help her understand his world. He wonders if his friends are okay, and she notes that if he's worried about them, he should find a way to return to his world. He reveals that when he first arrived there, he went everywhere to see if there was a way to go back. But the more he looked around, the more he realized that it had problems just like his old world. He thinks there must be a reason why he's there, so he won't return until he finds out what it is. But he thinks that if he just keeps helping people, he will eventually figure things out. He wonders what her dream is, so she reveals that she wants to restore her family to its role as the royal scepter. But he doesn't know what that is, so she explains that it's the title given to the mages who oversee all sorceress study on behalf of the royal family. Her family has had the duty for generations, and they took the role with the goal of bringing happiness to the people of the kingdom. But 10 years ago, her father lost the battle for the position of scepter, and they were expelled from the capital. The current scepter reserves magic for the order of knights and the aristocracy, using it as a tool for war, which is why she's trying to retake the position. She tells Red that he can laugh at her dream, since she knows it's childish, but he tells her he's in love with how big her dream is. As they move forward, they come across skeletons, and she realizes that it's the remains of the adventurers that made it there. Red finds the mana metal, but she thinks something's weird about it, because it looks like someone's gathering them. A dragon suddenly appears behind her, and Red tries to protect her, but he gets hit by the dragon's attack. He prepares to transform, and she wonders if he's going to fight with his wounds, but he notes that they need to defeat the dragon to get the mana metal. She tells him to stop, saying she can't have him die after getting him involved, but he mentions that his mission is to protect her dream, because he has fallen in love with it. He transforms into his armor, but it causes an explosion, which sends her flying, so she tells him not to transform when a person is standing behind him. The dragon attacks them, so he uses the turbo huddle to fly away, but she wonders how he plans to defeat it, so he tells her he will use his secret weapon. He mentions that it requires a strong bond of friendship, so he will need her help, and she wonders if it will work, because they have only known each other for half a day. But he believes that it will, because they shared their dreams with each other. He summons the Maximum Kaiser, but she can't understand what's happening, so he tells her it's the result of their bond of friendship. But the dragon starts to punch the mech, and Red mentions that their bond isn't giving enough power to it, so they have only 20 seconds left to use it. She thinks they can't win, but he grabs her, telling her their bond is strong enough to defeat the dragon, and he fires a powerful energy beam, which turns the dragon into dust. After 7 days, Ydra meets Red at the Adventurers Guild, revealing that she decided to become an adventurer since she wants to study his powers. She thinks she might be able to discover a new type of magic, which will allow her to send people to other worlds. She believes that if she can achieve that, she can regain the scepter position, and she tells him she wants to form a party with him. So he cries tears of joy, thinking he was sent there just to meet her. Ydra notes that even though he looks weird after transforming, his body is similar to the people of their world, so she decides to check his blood to see if he has mana, but Red is scared of her needle. A man at the guild gives Ydra a stat tag, saying it's proof that she's an adventurer, and it also keeps track of her skills and stats. She opens her stat screen, which reveals that her magic and intelligence are maxed out. So Red is impressed, and he notes that with her skills, she will surely become the royal scepter. She tells him to check his stats, since she thinks it will help her understand his powers, but it only confuses her more. 2 adventurers named Zatsu and Lane arrive, and they're angry at Ydra. But she doesn't remember them, so they remind her that she rejected them after they fought her golem. She notes that they can't expect her to remember every adventurer she rejected, and they tell Red he shouldn't form a party with her. But he mentions that even though she's harsh, she's still trying to help him, so she isn't as bad as they think. But they explain that they have doubts about her being an adventurer, because she's the daughter of the coward mage. So she gets angry, and she tells them to take back their words, saying they shouldn't insult her father, because they don't know anything about him. They get scared seeing the look on her face, and she reminds them that they couldn't even beat her golem, so they're in no position to judge others. They become upset hearing this, and they prepare to fight, but Red stops them, saying they should settle the dispute with the quest. They go to a dungeon, where Red mentions that a mysterious monster has been appearing there, saying the team who defeats it first will win. Ydra mentions that if she wins, Zatsu and Lane must apologize for insulting her father, but she promises to do anything for them if she loses. They accept the deal, because they're familiar with the dungeon, and they plan to make her their slave after they win. As they enter the dungeon, Zatsu and Lane try to use the path where they won't find any minotaurs, and they know they need to be quiet, because the monsters have sensitive hearing. But Red transforms into his armor, which causes an explosion, so they realize they're in trouble. They get surrounded by minotaurs, but Red sends them flying, saying he doesn't mind fighting against a group. but Ydra struggles to defeat them, and she tells him to use his secret weapon, so he summons the Maximum Kaiser, but it gets stuck because it's too big to fit in the dungeon. He notes that they need to fight the monsters on their own, but she sees that most of them have been crushed by the mech. A Minotaur attacks Zatsu from behind, but she saves him using water magic, which surprises him, and he asks her why she helped him. So she explains that even after her father lost the royal scepter position, he continued to study magic for the sake of others. So she thinks it's her duty to save everyone using magic, and she also mentions that they still need to apologize for what they said. Red calls her an intimidating beauty, which makes her blush, but Zatsu tells them to stop flirting during a fight. The monster they're hunting suddenly appears, and it makes the Minotaurs run away. Ydra prepares to fight, but Red tells her to stay back, because he can tell that it's as strong as an enemy general. Zatsu and Lane charge in, but it destroys their weapons in one swing, so Red rushes to save them. He kicks it, causing it to fall, but he's surprised by how hard its skin is, thinking it's like the force field used by a break fiend named Rejectandra. We go back to when Red's friend Blue is fighting Rejectandra, and he tries to shoot her, but she blocks with her shield. She tells him she doesn't like men who stuff themselves just to get their money's worth at a buffet, saying it makes him look cheap. He tells her he's not into girls who don't even try to pay, but she reminds him that he was the one who picked her up. She attacks him with a block of ice, but Red shoots it, breaking it into pieces. He tells Blue to think of a way to defeat her, while he keeps her busy, telling Blue he believes in him because he always thinks of something new when they fail. He mentions that a rejection can be overcome with a stronger bond, so they summon the Victory Kazuna Buster and use it to blow her up. We return to the present, as Red notes that he and his team united their hearts to charge up the weapon with bond energy, saying it's the weapon with the highest firepower. He asks Zatsu and Lane for their help, and Ydra thinks they won't cooperate, but she's shocked when they decide to go with his plan. He summons the Buster, but as they shoot it, the beam splits into two, and it doesn't hit the monster. It tries to crush them, but Red blocks its punch, and he recalls that if the people using the Buster have hostility in their hearts, the bond energy won't merge, and the beam will split into two. He mentions that it happened before, because there was a fight between Blue and Yellow. The monster punches Red, sending him flying into a wall, and he passes out. Ydra tries to heal him, but the monster attacks her, so Zatsu and Lane come to her rescue. She asks them what they're doing, so they tell her it's their way of repaying her for protecting them. They admit that they can't defeat the monster, so they need Red's powers to take it down, and she realizes she has been looking down on them because of her arrogance. They get blown away, and the monster is about to attack her, but Red wakes up, and he punches the monster, sending it flying. He notes that the hostility has been removed from their hearts, so he transforms into his armor, and they prepare to use the Buster once more. They manage to correctly fire it, blowing the monster up, but they're surprised as an injured old man suddenly appears. They take him to the guild, and after Zatsu and Lane leave, Ydra mentions that she didn't think it was possible to make up with the people she hated. Red tells her it always pays to keep challenging herself, so she notes that she has a new challenge for him as she takes out a needle, but he still tries to get away from her. Meanwhile, the old man gets out of the guild, but as he runs into two people, we learn that he was the monster that Red and the others defeated. He tries to attack, but the duo easily defeats him, and they take out the seed from his head, mentioning that they need it to save the world. Ydra and Red go to her home, where she tells Poseidon that Red will be living with them. He's worried that Red might have wrong intentions for her, since he's a guy, but she reminds him that he's also a man. But he notes that he has been serving her family for a long time, so he thinks of her as his granddaughter. He tells Red that if he wishes to live with them, he needs to become a eunuch, so he starts screaming, and she tries to save him, but the duo that defeated the old man suddenly appear. The girl introduces herself as the third princess of the Avalost Empire named Teltina, and she reveals that her attendant is a hero named Mist. He takes out his sword, saying he will punish Red and Ydra for acting lewd in front of Teltina, but she stops him, saying it's their fault for entering the house without permission. She tells him he needs to be more understanding, or he will never become a hero loved by everyone, but he tells her he only needs her love. She tells Ydra that she needs her to study a magic tool and help her collect it, but Red notices that it's just like the thing on the old man's head. Ydra mentions that the old man went missing after they left him in the guild, but Teltina tells them they shouldn't worry about him, because he's totally fine. She reveals that it's a mana seed, and it amplifies the mana of the people it infests, allowing them to use a special kind of magic, which allows them to pursue their desires. She calls it privilege magic, and Red wonders how it's different from Ydra's spells. So she explains that if someone wishes to obtain gold, it will give them a spell, which allows them to turn everything they touch into gold. She adds that if someone wishes to protect their treasure, they will get a barrier spell, which will cover their entire property. She explains that it allows its user to use advanced magic without training, and Ydra notes that it seems like a good thing. But Teltina reveals that the mana seed eventually takes over its user's body and turns them into a mana beast. Ydra wonders why the royal family doesn't ban it if it's dangerous, so Teltina mentions that the current royal scepter Shauya may have something to do with it. She explains that she doesn't have evidence, but she notes that the mana seeds are so expensive that only nobles can use it. So she thinks Shauya knows about it, but he's staying silent, and Red thinks they should get answers. But she reveals that Shauya has the backing of the other members of the royal family, so if she isn't careful, she could be eliminated. She mentions that he has been using privilege magic to make people suffer, so it's her duty as the princess to stop him. Ydra agrees to help her, thinking it's the perfect opportunity for her to defeat the royal scepter and form a good relationship with Teltina. Red also wants to help them, but Mist points his sword at him, saying he can't allow an adventurer with no manners to accompany Teltina. He thinks Red will just disrupt their journey, so he notes that he will show Mist that he's strong enough to help them. As they're about to fight, Teltina wonders if it's a wise thing to do, saying Mist is known for completing high-level bounties alone. She adds that he wields the sword that was used by the hero who defeated the Demon Queen. So he's the strongest swordsman using the greatest sword in the world, and she doesn't think anyone can defeat him in direct combat. Red transforms into his armor, but Mist isn't moved at all, and Ydra is surprised that he didn't freak out when he saw it. They start fighting, and Red gets pushed back, as he realizes that Mist is stronger than the enemy generals he defeated. Mist notes that Red isn't weak, so he decides to fight seriously, and he transforms his sword into its second form. Red decides to get serious as well, so he summons the Maximum Kaiser, which shocks Mist, but Ydra doesn't understand why Teltina is also in the mech. She thought only people who have formed a bond with Red could enter it, so he explains that they also have a bond, because Teltina told him about her goal. But Mist gets angry when he sees her in the mech, thinking Red is taking her hostage, so he charges in and manages to push the mech back. Red struggles to hit him since he's too small, so he summons his bond sword. Mist thinks he won't be able to hit him, but as he swings the sword, Mist is sent flying from just the wind. After losing the fight, he still refuses to let Red join them, but Teltina reminds him that he made a promise to Red. She mentions that he might become dangerous if they let him roam freely, so it's better if he just works with them. As they begin their journey, they decide to go to a town named Akalina, because its lord is rumored to have mana seeds. Red tells everyone to hurry, but Mist thinks he should follow Teltina's pace, as he calls him by his full name. But Red tells him to stop doing it, saying even Teltina just calls him Red. He doesn't like her getting close to him, so he chases after him. They reach Akalina, but they're surprised by how no one is present there, and Teltina thinks it's because of the mana seed. A woman tells them they should avoid the Lord, saying everyone's prohibited from talking about him to outsiders, and she tells them to leave as quickly as possible. Teltina wonders how the Lord knows about them, and Ydra thinks it's because of the magic fields surrounding the town. A monster suddenly appears behind them and attacks Ydra, but Red saves her, and she thinks it's also a part of the Lord's privilege spell. The Lord appears, and Teltina tells him she can't stand by while he oppresses his people using magic, so she orders him to give her the mana seed. He notes that the people of the town were on the wrong path, and they were never going to reach paradise, so he showed them the right direction. But Red gets angry, because he's threatening his people with his powers, so that they will do anything he wants. Red prepares to fight, and he transforms into his armor, but he struggles to keep up with the monsters, and he keeps getting hit by their attacks. Ydra thinks the privilege spell allows the Lord to detect anyone who disobeys his rules, and it also summons monsters to punish them. She thinks the magic field around the city also allows him to see Red's weak spots, and he keeps summoning monsters there to attack him. Teltina tells Mist to help him, but he explains that if he joins the fight, he will also get a beating, so he thinks they should observe the Lord until they can find his weakness. But she knows that he's lying, so he admits that he just wants to see Red get beaten. He prepares to summon the Kazina beasts, but a monster suddenly hits him from behind, and his armor shatters, so everyone realizes he's in trouble. But a smoke bomb blinds the monsters, and Red's group manages to escape as the Lord realizes that his enemies are back. We see the woman who warned them about the Lord, and she tells them they're in the headquarters of the resistance group, revealing their goal is to liberate the town. She introduces herself as Grossa, and she explains that the Lord can't sense them there because they're outside the town. Red tells her about the mana seeds, and she agrees to help him destroy them, but mentions that their group can't defeat the Lord. Mist thinks they should just move to another town, but she explains that they don't want to abandon their homes. Red remembers his own hometown, and he understands how they feel, so he promises to help them get their town back. Ydra wonders how they should approach the situation, and she shows everyone a list of the Lord's rules, saying that whoever violates them will be attacked by monsters. So Red suggests sniping him with the Maximum Kaiser, but she tells him it would destroy the town. She explains that the Lord's manor is at the center, and his spell remains active even while he's sleeping. She notes that she can only think of one way to defeat him, telling Red and Mist to watch each other's backs as they fight. But she isn't sure if it will work, since Mist hates Red, so they don't make a good team. Teltina tells Mist to get along with Red, promising to clean his ears if they work together, so he instantly agrees to help. That evening, we see Ydra taking a bath, when Teltina suddenly joins her, saying she has never bathed with someone her age. She reveals that she went through Ydra's records, so she knows about her passion to help people using magic, as well as her determination to reclaim the royal scepter position. After that, Red meets Teltina, telling her he will take a bath, and she knows that Ydra is still in the pool, but she tells him there's nobody there. We see Mist listening in, as Red asks her why she wants to join them in the manor, because the Lord's magic will be dangerous. So she reveals that she wants to be just like him, reminding him that he fought the enemy leader alone, even though he knew the odds were against him, because he wanted to save everyone. She thinks he's willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of others, but he explains that he doesn't want to die, and she mentions that she also values her life. So she tells him to protect her during their journey, but Mist gets upset hearing this. Red rushes to take his bath, but as he jumps into the pool, he realizes that Ydra is also there, and they freak out as they see each other. Mist refuses to be replaced by Red, so he secretly takes Red's bond plate, thinking he's the only one fit to protect Teltina. The next day, they head to the manor, and the girls wait outside, as Red and Mist prepare to fight the Lord. Red tries to transform, but he realizes that his bond plate is missing, so he panics as a monster appears behind him and sends him flying. The girls see him as he falls into the water, and Ydra tells Teltina to wait there as she dives in to save him. The monsters tell Mist not to defy the Lord, and he prepares to face them alone, thinking he doesn't need Red to defeat them. In a flashback, we see Red with his friend Silver, who mentions that bonds are like blades because they're able to hurt people, and it's difficult to use them in great numbers. She adds that it's hard to let them go, and she knows that Red keeps shouting about forging bonds because he doesn't want to be alone. We return to the present as Red regains consciousness, and he realizes that Ydra saved him. But he wonders why she's acting strange, so she reveals that she had to give him mouth to mouth. But he doesn't mind, and he asks her what happened to Mist and Teltina. We return to Mist, as Teltina tells him the plan has failed, and she orders him to regroup with Red. But he tells her it's okay, reminding her that he's the hero, and he uses his holy sword's powers to cut down the monsters around him. She's impressed that he can defeat them alone, but the Lord summons more of his minions, and he recognizes Mist as the hero chosen by the holy sword. In a flashback to 2 years earlier, Teltina tells Mist to serve as her hero, telling him he was chosen by the holy sword. He thinks he isn't worthy, since he doesn't have mana, but she explains that the sword actually absorbs mana, and all the other warriors that have tried to wield it fell unconscious after just touching it. So he realizes that he was made to wield the sword, and she asks him to help her save the world. He mentions that he doesn't want to protect the people who bullied him, but she tells him she understands how he feels. She thinks he's upset, because he wants someone to accept him, and she promises to stay with him if he's honest about his feelings, saying she accepts him for who he is. We return to the present, as Mist mentions that he will destroy all of the mana seeds for Teltina, and his sword takes on its second form, which burns all of the monsters in an instant. The Lord is impressed, but he reminds Mist that Teltina is wide open, and he realizes that the monsters are about to attack her. So he rushes to her side and protects her with his body, as the Lord notes that he isn't used to defending others. He tells her he will create an opening for her to escape, but she mentions that everything will be okay, and Red suddenly arrives to save them. Ydra uses her magic to create a barrier, but she tells them it won't last long, and she starts healing Mist, who tells her not to worry about him and take Teltina to safety. Red tells him not to push himself, but Mist refuses to accept his help, and he drops Red's bond plate. Everyone sees it, so they realize that he stole it, but Red thinks he just wanted to try transforming, saying he understands how Mist feels, because everyone wants to experience it. But Teltina tells him to be honest, so he reveals that he was afraid, because he thought Red would take his place as the hero. He admits that he tried to kill him, so that he can stay by her side, but she tells Mist they aren't so different. She mentions how she was a low-standing member of the royal family, and she didn't have knights to serve her, but she thought it was her duty to save the world, so she desperately searched for him. She tells him he's her only hero, saying she will never replace him, and Red mentions that their bonds could become stronger if they put it to the test. He invites Mist to forge a bond with him, but he immediately rejects him, telling him they aren't compatible with each other, and he doesn't want to see his face. A monster breaks the barrier, but Mist cuts it down, and he tells Red to face the other way. He transforms into his ranger form, and the Lord surrounds them with his minions, but they start fighting together, and they easily defeat the monsters. One of them is about to attack the girls, but Red shoots it, and the Lord can't believe he can't find their weak spot. Red charges in with Mist, and they attack together to finish him off, as Ydra notes that their teamwork has improved. But they realize that the mana seed is going berserk, and it starts to expand, so they decide to retreat. It takes to the sky, and everyone panics as they see it, realizing it's about to destroy the town. Grossa orders everyone to evacuate, but Red tells his friends not to worry, saying he's used to fighting against giant monsters. He summons the Maximum Kaiser, and Mist wonders why he's inside it, so the girls realize that he was able to form a bond with Red. They fly to the monster, and they start pushing it away, as Red notes that he will take it to a place where they can destroy it safely. They reach outer space, and his friends can't believe it actually exists, as Teltina realizes that there are no angels above the clouds. He summons the Great Bond Sword, as the creature prepares to attack, but he allows Mist to control the Maximum Kaiser, and he uses the sword to slice the creature in half. Everyone sees a massive explosion, and they celebrate as they see the Maximum Kaiser, realizing Red and his friends were able to defeat the monster. They return to the town, where they see the Lord's mana seed, and Teltina notes that since it has already gone berserk, it will continue to revive even if its host is unconscious. She mentions that there are only two ways to stop it, saying they can either kill the Lord, or remove it from his body. But she uses her privilege spell to summon the silver wolf Vicolus, who appears to eat the Lord, but he immediately spits him out, as Ydra realizes that the mana seed is gone. Teltina reveals that he removed it, and she explains that he's completely harmless despite his size, saying his only ability is to retrieve the mana seeds. She orders him to come back, but she mentions that she could become a target for their enemies because of her ability, so she wants to keep it a secret. Red recalls that he also kept his identity a secret, because Blue told him not to tell anyone about his powers, but he reveals that he was only able to do it for a week. They decide not to say anything about Vicolus, but a voice tells them it's too late, and a royal demon named Dobby appears. Red asks Ydra about royal demons, so she reveals that they're the children of the Demon Queen, who was sealed away 1,000 years ago. She knows that they plan to set her free, but she notes that they've been quiet for centuries, and she wonders why Dobby decided to show up. So he tells them he's there to get rid of them, because they're messing with his plan, revealing that he's the one who planted the mana seeds. Teltina becomes upset hearing this, saying people are suffering because of him, but he doesn't care, and he reveals that his plan is to fill the world with negative mana so that his mother will return. He mentions that he's willing to sacrifice humans to achieve his goal, so Red and Mist try to attack him, but he flies away, saying he thought they were already exhausted. Red transforms into his ranger form, but Dobby summons his minions, as Ydra notes that Grossa is one of them. So she realizes that they're the members of the Resistance, and he reveals he gave them defective mana seeds, which immediately went berserk. Red summons his weapon, and he charges at Dobby, but his attacks are blocked, as Teltina tells Mist to help him, He explains that he wants to protect her, but she tells him they need to get rid of Dobby because he's the one spreading the seeds. So Mist decides to take him on, but he uses his weapon to attack Mist and Red, and they struggle to defend themselves. Ydra uses her spell to burn the monsters, while Vicalis removes their mana seeds. But Teltina suddenly becomes exhausted, as Ydra realizes that her body has reached its limit because she's absorbing the mana from the seeds. Ydra thinks the Holy Sword can absorb her mana, but she doesn't want to disturb Mist because she wants him to defeat Dobby. He mocks the members of the resistance group because they all wanted to protect the town, but they immediately went berserk after he gave them the mana seeds. Red tries to shoot him, but he blocks the bullets, as he mentions that the royal demons have a stronger bond than humans because they're working together to see their mother again. He adds that he still remembers his mother's smile, and he's been fighting for years just to see it again. He mentions that Red is getting in the way of their bond, so he suddenly stops fighting, but Mist tells him not to listen to Dobby. He recalls that the villains in his world also had bonds, but he notes that if it threatens other people, he needs to put an end to it. He summons his turbo huddle, and he uses it to fly towards Dobby, who tries to stop him with his hands, which also surround Mist. Red mentions that it won't work against him, but Dobby detonates his hands, so Red and Mist fall to the ground. He thinks it's all over, but Red gets back up, and Dobby believes that he'll become a real problem in the future, since he's an otherworlder. So he uses his big smile skill to finish him off, but Mist pushes him out of the way, and Dobby smashes him instead. The big smile explodes, and Red wonders why Mist saved him, so he explains that he just did it on a whim. Dobby notes that he was able to survive because the Holy Sword weakened the explosion, but Red becomes angry, and he suddenly exudes a dark aura. He punches Dobby away, and he notes that otherworlders are a problem because their powers are a mystery. But a mage suddenly summons tentacles, which restrain all of the monsters in the area. She recognizes Ydra, and she mocks her for struggling against the monsters. We learn that she's the royal scepter Xiaoya, and Dobby decides to retreat, so Red and Xiaoya try to stop him, but he manages to get away. After that, Mist apologizes to Teltina for failing to protect her, but she reminds him that he was just following her orders. Grossa wonders what she's doing, so Ydra explains that she's letting the Holy Sword absorb her mana so that her body can recover. Ydra thinks the town was destroyed because they weren't strong enough to protect it, but Grossa tells her not to worry, saying the villagers will work together to restore it. Red thinks that Dobby must have fought otherworlders before, and Ydra mentions that there are records about the hero who sealed the Demon Queen, which mention that he came from another world. Red wonders if he was able to return to his world, but she reveals that nobody knows what happened to him after he sealed away the Demon Queen. Xiaoya suddenly interrupts them, telling them they have to return to the capital because Teltina needs to be treated. Red realizes that she's in terrible condition because the mana overdose caused her seed to swell, and Xiaoya creates a transportation gate which teleports everyone away. They reach the sorcery tower, as Xiaoya reveals that it's the only place to study magic. Xiaoya uses her powers to heal Teltina, which makes Mist emotional, and he goes out of control, so Ydra and Red throw him outside. Xiaoya notes that she'll give her medicine, which will slow the seed's growth, and Teltina will soon return to normal. Ydra wonders why Xiaoya knows how to make the antidote, so she reveals that she's been studying the mana seeds. But she had royals backing her, so she couldn't make a big show out of it, and Ydra realizes that the members of the royal family also have mana seeds. Xiaoya notes that most of them go unused, because they're mainly used for competing with other nobles, or for military use in case of an emergency. She decides to delay her report to the Emperor, so that they can stay in the tower until Teltina recovers. Xiaoya gives them a tour, and Red wonders if everyone there is a mage. So she reveals that they're all authorized magic researchers with official status, unlike the stray mages they can find outside. He doesn't understand her, so Ydra explains that learning magic isn't forbidden, but the research and development of magic tools require certification in their country. Ydra reveals that she has a license, but despite the certification, a mage must get the Sorcery Tower's approval to publicize their research. So Xiaoya has complete control over all the research, and she notes that her agenda is total oversight and control of magic tools through the certification system. But Ydra thinks her agenda is monopolizing magic for the aristocracy, and she believes that magic technology should be used to help those who can't use magic. But Xiaoya thinks she's as stupid as her father, and she reminds Yidra of the failed magical tools that were produced during her father's time, which led to a number of accidents. Xiaoya asks Red for his opinion, and he agrees that Yidra's dream is too difficult to achieve. But before he can explain his point, she becomes angry and flies away from the tower. He chases after her, but she doesn't want to listen to him because she thinks he finds her dream childish. He jumps at her, so they both fall to the ground, and he reminds her that ever since they met, he's been on her side. But he mentions that she can't achieve her dream alone, so she'll need everyone's support. She finally understands him, and he helps her get up, but he starts sneezing because of all the snow, which makes her laugh. On their way back to the tower, Red thinks they'll need more help to make everyone happy, and he believes that they must be flexible in adding ideas from multiple sources. He thinks Xiaoya could be a good ally, because back in his world, they also had a licensing system to use dangerous items. She agrees that there's nothing wrong with it, as long as everyone's safety is the priority, but she thinks Xiaoya's approach is too extreme. She notes that even low-quality magic tools can be used safely, and the most important thing is to ensure that everyone learns how to use them. She thinks they should spread awareness in towns without schools, but Red wonders if she has discussed it with Xiaoya. He thinks that if they work together, it will make the world a better place, but she reminds him that Xiaoya stole her father's position as the royal scepter. He understands that it's difficult to form a bond with one's enemy, but he assures her that he'll support her, which makes her realize that she likes him. As Yidra takes a bath, she looks at the mana metal, which led to her meeting with Red, and she wonders how it crystallizes. She notes that most magic crystals are formed when mana gets into ore deposits, which helps them serve as a fuel source for magic tools, or an amplifier when a spell is cast. But even though she can sense the mana inside the crystal, she's clueless about how to draw it out. She becomes confused as she thinks about it, and she suddenly remembers Red. The mana crystal starts glowing, and he suddenly falls from above, leaving them both embarrassed. A few moments earlier, we see Mist enjoying the view on the terrace, when Red suddenly interrupts him. He thanks Mist for saving his life against Dobby, and he notes that he was just acting on impulse. Red is still grateful, but he advises Mist against repeating it in the future, and the seriousness of his tone shocks him. Red hugs him and asks him what he's doing there, so he mentions that he's thinking about how beautiful space is. He notices Red glowing, and he thinks it might be an emergency Kizuna warp, but he suddenly teleports to Yidra. Red tells her about the emergency Kizuna warp, which lets him summon allies in case of an emergency. But he mentions that the bracer needs to project a strong bond energy to activate it, and he wonders what caused it. Yidra realizes that the mana metal reacts to bond energy, so she thinks it's the mysterious power responsible for the mana metal's crystallization. He explains that according to Professor Pythagoras, who developed the Kizuna bracers and beasts, bond energy is the universal power source that governs the creation of everything. She realizes that his suit and weapons are all created by bonds, but she can't understand how a force of creation could result in warping. She wonders if he can use his power to return to his original world, but he tells her he can't do it. The next day, both Red and Yidra are awkward around each other, so Teltina thinks they may have gotten intimate, but they both tell her that isn't the case. Xiaoya notices them arguing, and thinks they shouldn't be talking such nonsense in front of the royal audience chamber. Teltina greets her father goddess, and he mentions that he's been informed about the mana seeds, as well as their involvement with royal demons. So he notes that he'll soon order everyone to discard the seeds, and he thinks she no longer needs to carry on her dangerous journey. But Teltina mentions that despite knowing the danger, a few people might refuse to give it up, and her privilege spell will be useful in dealing with them, so she can't stop her journey. He tells her to be careful, but the Prince Dariel wonders if it's a good idea to dispose of such a useful tool. So Goddess tells him that the mana seeds may lead to the Demon Queen's revival, but he thinks it doesn't matter, because they just need to defeat her again. He notes that they have a hero wielding the Holy Sword, so they should use the seeds militarily and overthrow the Demi-Human Federation. But Teltina notes that royal demons are more dangerous since they can manipulate the power of the seeds. Xiaoya reveals that they can modify the seeds, saying they're already experimenting to make it happen, so the king orders them to seize the seeds. After that, Dariel advises Teltina to be careful, because the royal family's reputation depends on her. She thanks him for his concern, and he mentions that she has changed a lot, wondering if she's trying to replace her brother Altio, but she knows that she can never do that. Ydra stops Xiaoya and asks her if she's serious about the military application of mana seeds, so she notes that due to her position as the royal scepter, she can't refuse the royals. Ydra tries to share her ideas about reforming the certification system because she can't change the world alone. But Xiaoya refuses to accept them and instead gives her an important task, which will place them in her good books. They all head to the Sun Forest, where the ancient elves live, and Ydra thinks they might know about the hero from 1,000 years ago. She notes that according to the reports, one of the elves has a strange power, and Red wonders if it's a privileged spell, but she tells him she isn't sure. They soon reach the forest, and seeing the large cacti, Red notes that his friend Yellow would have been thrilled to see it. Ydra mentions that the region used to be rich in plantation, but the queen demon turned it into a desert. They realize that the forest is colder than the desert, so Ydra and Teltina change into their new outfits, which impress Mist and Red. But Ydra accidentally pricks her finger, so Red rushes to help her. He mentions that even if the wound is small, it can get infected, so he gives her a band-aid, but she freaks out since it's on her ring finger. He wonders why she's behaving strangely, and Teltina teases him for being clueless, but an elf suddenly kidnaps Ydra. Red tries to chase them using his turbo huddle, but he's attacked by needles from all directions, so he decides to follow them on foot. Teltina tries to help him, but Mist pulls her just in time to avoid an incoming arrow. They notice several elves aiming their bows at them, and one of the elves asks them what they're doing in their forest. So Mist notes that they came to recover the bizarre power in their possession, and he gives them the chance to surrender peacefully. But the elves think they want Aemon, so they start attacking them, but he uses his sword to create a wind vortex that deflects their attacks and blows them away. He asks them about Aemon, but an elf named Ranya arrives, and she threatens to punish Mist and Teltina for polluting their village. He moves back to protect Teltina, and he's surprised that her magical tool can speak. Meanwhile, Red chases after the elf, but he's unable to catch up, so Ydra activates the emergency Kazuna warp, which teleports Red in front of them. He uses his bond bind to capture the elf, and catches Ydra before she falls to the ground, telling her he's glad that the emergency Kazuna warp using the mana metal was successful. But the elf notes that his friends won't allow them to take the forest or the power of Aemon, which makes them wonder what he's talking about. Ranya changes into her armor and introduces herself as Aemon, the vessel of God and guardian of the Sun Forest, but Teltina notes that she has the same powers as Red. Mist realizes that the elves' special power wasn't a mana seed, but she becomes angry because they compared the sacred Aemon to the seeds, so she starts attacking them. She reveals that her power was passed down from the Otherworld warrior, who fought alongside the first Aemon. Teltina notes that they don't need to fight, since they're just after the seeds, but Ranya isn't ready to forgive them for trespassing into their forest and harming her friends. She continues to attack Mist, but he blocks with his sword, and he asks her if she has a giant golem. But she's completely clueless, so he realizes that she isn't as powerful as Red. She notices that his sword absorbs mana, so she switches to long-range fire attacks, but he upgrades his holy sword to its second form and slices through her fireball. She uses it as a distraction and launches multiple fireballs towards him, but he manages to dodge the attack. He tries to escape with Teltina, but Ranya changes her armor into a falcon and starts chasing them. She launches homing missiles, and he stops them with his sword's third form, but she kicks right through the fire and sends him crashing to the ground. Teltina notes that they can't continue fighting, but Mist tells her he'll defeat Ranya no matter what, and he activates the Holy Sword's sixth form. But just as they're about to exchange blows, Red arrives in his giant armor and tells them to stop fighting. Ydra is surprised that Ranya's powers are similar to Red's, and Mist asks him if he knows her, but he mentions that she isn't one of the Kazuna Rangers. She thinks he's the legendary Red Warrior the prophecy spoke of, and all the elves suddenly bow to him. They ask him to forgive them and save their forest, but he can't understand what's happening. Ranya introduces herself as the future chief and seventh heir to Aemon, and she takes them to her village Lugsim. Teltina notes that she seems like a completely different person, and she apologizes for her actions. She explains that she hides her true feelings during combat to build momentum, or else she'll be too self-conscious to fight. Ranya takes them to the Elven Tomb, where they learn about the prophecy, which mentions that a Red Warrior will save the village from grave danger. He wonders what the danger is, and she mentions that it's the owner of a mana seed named Azir, who rules the town of Kukia. Teltina remembers that the town made a fortune by magic crystal mining, and the previous lord passed away in a rebellion. Rania notes that Azir is his son, and he has a privileged spell that turns anything he touches into sand, which he can control at will. They reveal that he's been trying to conquer their forest, and Rania explains that his powers work well in the desert, so she can't defeat him. She mentions that he asked her to surrender her powers, or else he will turn their forest into a desert, so she needs Red's help to defeat him. He agrees to help her, and Teltina tells Mist they can't turn a blind eye because mana seeds are involved, but she realizes that he still holds a grudge against Rania. Red asks about the prophet who made the prophecy, so Rania notes that according to the stories, he was also a member of the heroes' party like the first Aemon. She mentions that the only one who can tell him more about the prophet is the Great Elder, who has been alive for a long time, but she's been asleep for centuries. Ydra wonders why he's more curious about the prophet than the first Aemon, so he notes that someone comes to mind whenever he hears about the prophecy. The elves show them their traditional magic, which has been passed down through generations. Ydra finds it impressive, and they tell her about different kinds of seals. While they're discussing magic tools, Red asks Rania why she's sitting alone, so she mentions that she also had a human friend. He thinks it's Azir, because while others were angry at his actions, she seemed to be sad. He wonders if they were close, and she mentions that whenever she visited Kukia with her father, she used to talk to him, because they were supposed to be the next leaders of their villages. She notes that it's all in the past, and the next time they fight, she'll forget all her personal feelings and defeat him as the forest's guardian. He thinks they can make up afterward, but she finds it difficult, so he tells her about the moment he fought against his friend, but they became even closer after the fight. He thinks that once they defeat Azir, they can figure out what's wrong with him, which relieves her, so she asks him to tell her more about his story. Meanwhile, Ydra thanks the elves for teaching her about the seal engraving spells, and Teltina thinks their way of life might be closer to her ideals. Ydra sees Red talking to Rania, and she becomes jealous, so Teltina tries to calm her down. Red reveals that his parents died when he was just a kid, so he was mostly alone, but one day, a man named Daigo came to him and introduced himself as his father's best friend. He started living with Daigo's family, along with his son Hiro and his daughter Sumika. He asked Red to consider them his own family, but he couldn't give his parents' place to anyone. Daigo took him to the yard, where they planted an olive seedling, believing it would take root and grow just like Red would become part of their family. Hiro realized they would eventually become friends, so he offered Red a handshake without hesitation. Red mentions he was bullied in school for being a transfer student, and they used to whip him or set him on fire. But Rania can't believe it, so he notes that he might have exaggerated. He mentions that whenever he was being bullied, Hiro came to his rescue, but he was against violence, so he only used threats to make them stop. He explains how they became best friends, and how they continued to grow their bond despite their differences. Hiro used to teach him, and they eventually got into the same high school, where Red became popular, but he believed it was all because of Hiro. He wanted to do something to help him, so when Hiro stood in the school elections, he asked everyone to vote for him. He won the elections, but Red's friends thought he was a more suitable candidate than Hiro. Red mentions that one day, a break fiend came to their town, and it was the first time he turned into the Red Ranger, but Rania wonders how he ended up like that. But he tells her it's a different story, and he notes that things remain the same between him and Hiro after he became a ranger. On the day of Hiro's piano performance, Red tried to cheer for him as much as possible, but after that, he became busy fighting monsters. So he got home late and collapsed on the floor. He told everyone he was too exhausted from soccer practice, but something changed as the olive tree withered, and we learn that it was the symbol of his relationship with the family. After that, we go back to the day another monster called the Bond Killer came to their town, and it turned people against each other. It unveiled the negative emotions hidden in everyone's heart, so Red tries to stop him, but he's outnumbered, so he uses the emergency Kazuna warp to call his friends. They help him defeat the monster, but Red becomes exhausted again, and he collapses inside the park as he wonders who the Bond Killer is. Hiro helps patch him up, but Red notices that he's also bleeding. He mentions that he'll be fine, because the truth is painful and it fuels his hatred. He transforms into the Bond Killer, and another monster called Betrayus also arrives. Red asks him what he did to Hero, so he notes that he's been reborn into his true form with the Break Fiend belt. He tries to shoot Red, so he changes into his armor. He thinks the Break Fiends are using Hero, but he mentions that he chose it himself because Red has always been in his way. He notes how his father stopped paying attention to him after Red's arrival, and his sister also likes Red more than him. He thinks he should have never become his friend, and he decides to end everything between them, but Red reminds him that they're best friends. Hero mentions that they're enemies, and that he never liked him in the first place, telling him it was all a lie, but Red refuses to believe it. He kicks Red away, and Betrayus notes that his bond power will soon collapse, so they give him a belt to join them. Red fights back against the dark powers, and he tells Hero to do the same, reminding him of how he offered his hand. He starts hitting Hero, and reminds him of his passion for bonds. But Betrayus mentions that it's too late, because he has already gathered everyone's negative energy, and soon the dimensional door will open. A dark beam from the door changes Hero into his giant armor, and he starts shooting lasers everywhere. But the other Kizuna Rangers arrive, because they heard them over the comms. They all join together to create the Maximum Kaiser, but they still can't defeat Hero, who easily overpowers them. They realize they can't win with a defensive strategy, but just as he's about to hit them, another Maximum Kaiser arrives to stop him. They realize it must have entered through the dimensional portal, and they use their reconciliatory Maximum Blaster to defeat Hero. Everyone returns to normal, and Hero apologizes to Red. He thinks they can't return to how things used to be since he betrayed him, but Red notes that they can just reforge their bond. Everyone praises his story, and Ydra is happy that everything returned to normal, but he notes that Hero kept changing into the Bond Killer, so he had to fight him 13 times. Teltina notes that it was a long grudge, but there are cards that suddenly fall from the sky, and they trap people inside. Ydra and Teltina get sucked in, and we see the man controlling the cards, as he notes that elves are cute. Red realizes he's using a privilege spell because he has a mana seed, and Mist tries to take him out. The man mentions that he has hostages, but Mist tells him it doesn't matter because privilege spells are undone when the user is defeated. But he shows Mist Teltina's card, so he gets distracted, and the man manages to capture him. Rania becomes upset because he's sucked the elves into his cards, and she threatens to kill him. But Azir suddenly appears, telling her she hasn't changed because she's still hiding her emotions before a battle. She mentions that she can barely recognize him because he used to fight for a world where humans and demi-humans can coexist. But he explains that his goal hasn't changed, and he promises to rule over everyone equally after he conquers the world. He tells Rania he'll free the hostages if she obeys him, but she realizes that he has changed, and Red thinks he needs to wake up because he's oppressing others to achieve coexistence. They prepare for battle, but Azir tells Rania to head to the Udold ruins, and he flies away, as the man reminds them that he has hostages. Red asks her about the ruins, so she tells him she can take them there, and she summons her bike, which they use to travel through the desert. As they reach the ruins, a chimera stops them, telling them only Rania can pass, and they realize that he used a privilege spell to transform his body. They attack him simultaneously, and he crashes to the ground, but the man with the cards suddenly appears. Red threatens to shoot him, telling him to release his hostages, but he shows Red his friends, and he starts licking Teltina. He activates his giant bear trap, which restrains Red, and he thinks he can't lose, but Ydra suddenly activates her explosion spell. He wonders how she was able to use magic while she's trapped inside, so she reveals that she grabbed the edges of the card while she was being sucked in, and put a blasting seal. He thinks she's insane, because she blew up the card she was in, but she explains that she's already used to explosions because of Red. As he collapses, everyone's released from the cards, and they all thank Ydra for saving them. Teltina wants to punish him for everything he did to them, so she summons Vicalis, and orders it to take his seed. We cut to Azir, as his servant Vidin mentions that their mercenaries have failed. But Azir thinks they've done enough, because he was able to set everything up, and he notes that he can now fight Rania at full power without damaging the forest. Vidin thinks his approach is questionable, telling him to consider the extra work he's putting them through, but he mentions that he appreciates everything they've done for him. Vidin wishes him luck, and he decides to leave, as Azir mentions that he'll perform his duties as the ruler of Kukia. Red and Rania arrive, but he uses his privilege spell to summon giant arms, which destroy their bike. The others see it, and Azir summons a creature called the Lillibod, which turns the bike into sand. They realize that it was created with his privilege spell, and it covers the area with sand, as Red realizes that his friends are sinking. He tries to save Yidra, but she sinks into the sand, and he asks Azir what he did to them, so he tells Red to join them if he wants to find out. He reveals that Lillibod can control sand, and since they're in the middle of the desert, he can easily crush them with his powers. Red charges in, but Lillibod gets in his way, and he thinks he'll turn into sand if it touches him, so he covers its hand with band-aids, and smashes it with his fist. But Lillibod immediately recovers, so Rania activates her jackal form, and she charges at Azir, but Lillibod blocks her attack. She attacks it with incredible speed, and explains that it can't harm her, because she's moving faster than his sand. She and Red rush forward, but it suddenly stops time, and it grabs onto them, as Azir tells them they're no match for him. Red uses his turbo huddle to break free, and he realizes that Azir can't turn living things into sand, but he wonders why he didn't destroy their gear. So he explains that he doesn't want to get rid of it, because it will soon belong to him. We see Red's friends under the sand, and they see the remains of other adventurers. The girls panic as they see mummies, so Mist prepares to fight them, realizing they're in a nest of monsters. Azir mentions that he's invincible because of his privilege spell, and he tells Red and Rania to accept him as their ruler. But Red tells him his mana seed will mess him up, because it will turn him into a monster if it goes berserk. But he tells Red he's in the way, and Lillibod activates its powers, causing him to sink into the sand. We return to Red's friends, as Mist uses his holy sword to burn the mummies, and Red joins them, so Yidra asks him about Rania. He reveals that she's still fighting outside, but the mummies lunge at him, so he shoots them with his pistol, telling everyone they need to help her. Rania uses her powers to break free, and she tells Azir that mana seeds are dangerous, but he reveals that he already knows that, telling her he's willing to take risks to achieve his goal. He mentions that he won't let the seed overpower him, but she's worried that he might turn into a monster. Lillibod continues to attack her, and he tells her she hasn't changed at all, but she tells him it isn't true, saying he forced her to change. In a flashback from 12 years ago, Azir introduces himself to Rania as the next Lord of Kukia, and he knows that she's the next Aemon, so he wants to be her friend. But she ignores him, and he thinks he upset her because he wasn't respectful. He thinks she's older than him because elves are gifted with a longer lifespan, but she reveals that she isn't angry, and she notes that elves only live slightly longer than humans because the Demon Queen destroyed their sacred tree. He tells her he wants to learn more about elves, but she suddenly jumps away. He thinks she has an attitude, so she can't be his friend, but her mask suddenly falls on him, so he climbs a giant cactus to look for her. He sees her resting on top of it, but they both freak out as she wakes up, and they fall to the ground. She realizes that her masks are missing, so he reveals that he has them, but he refuses to give them back. She begs him to return them, and he realizes that she's nothing like the person he met earlier. He gives her the masks, and she immediately wears one of them, but her personality suddenly changes, so he takes it back. He asks her why she wants them so badly, so she reveals that she has a weak personality, thinking she doesn't have what it takes to become the next Aemon. So she wears her masks to transform herself into her calm or warrior version, and he realizes that she's using them to adjust her personality. He mentions that he doesn't know what kind of person should rule the elves, but he tells her he wants to get along with her real self. She mentions that she's a crybaby, but he tells her she's a likable person, and he notes that she can be strong in her own way, telling her to practice talking to him without her mask. She eventually becomes comfortable in her skin, but she realizes that she still needs to wear her warrior mask while fighting, so that her emotions won't get in the way. We return to the present, as Rania continues to fight Azir, and she tries to attack him with her spirit coffin, but Lillibod stops time. Red and the others use a Kizuna beast to escape, but they see that Azir was able to defeat Rania, and he steals the power of Aemon, as they realize that he has become stronger than ever before. Yidris starts healing Rania, who begs Red to stop him, so he prepares to take him on, telling him to return the power of Aemon. But Azir refuses, because he wants to use it to rule over everyone. In a flashback, we see the Kukia workers complaining about their wages, because they're getting paid less than the elves. So Azir explains that the elves are using their magic for subterranean detonations, which is a dangerous task for humans who can't use magic. but the workers think he's just favoring the elves because of his relationship with Rania. Azir eats with his father Belga, who asks him about Rania, so he explains that they're just friends, but Belga thinks they should take their relationship to the next level. Azir reminds him that they have a complicated relationship with the demi-humans, but Belga notes that their marriage could improve it. He tells Azir he won't force him to marry her, because he wants him to be happy, but Azir notes that he wants to make a perfect world with her, where humans and demi-humans can coexist. The workers start a rebellion, and they break into the manor, so Belga tells Azir to escape while he negotiates with them. He tells them he's willing to discuss the problem, but one of them throws a pitchfork at him, and ends up killing him. Azir reads a message from Rania, who offers to help him rebuild the town, but the people think he isn't fit to rule them, because he favors the elves. He thinks the only way to prevent people from rebelling against him is to suppress them with overwhelming strength, and Vidin tells him he's right. Azir doesn't recognize him, so he tells Azir he's his butler, and gives him a mana seed, telling him it will help him change the world. We return to the present, as Red and Azir start fighting, and Azir transforms into his jackal form, while Red takes out his double-bladed weapon. They start exchanging blows, as Red's friends watch the fight, but Ydra is annoyed, because their armors keep making strange noises. Red pushes Azir back, telling him he hurt Rania's feelings, but he explains that he never wanted to hurt her. He notes that he's willing to make sacrifices to change the world, thinking he's the only one who has the power to do it, and he uses his privilege spell to summon Lilibod. It prepares to attack Red, but Mist slices off its arm, telling him he'll take care of it. Red charges at Azir, who transforms into his crocodile form, and smashes him to the ground. Ydra rushes to help him, but Lilibod stops time, and she realizes she can't move, but she thinks time isn't frozen, because she can feel something clinging to her body. Azir prepares to kill Red, but Mist uses his holy sword to create a wind vortex, which sends Azir flying. He wonders how Mist can move and stop time, and he thinks it's because he's the hero. But Ydra notes that it's because of his holy sword, and she mentions that Lilibod can only stop the time of the sand on their bodies. She explains that they're covered in sand, because they're in the middle of the desert, so they can't move when Lilibod activates its skill. Mist realizes he was able to move, because his holy sword absorbed the mana of the sand on his body, and Azir realizes that they can counter Lilibod's skill. He uses his pharaoh form, and Red continues to fight him, telling him there's nothing wrong with his ideals. But he shouldn't try to do everything alone, because there are people like Rania, who are willing to help him achieve his goal. Lilibod tries to interfere, but Ydra casts her ice spell to freeze it, and Mist burns it with his holy sword. Red uses his burning fist to defeat Azir, and tells him it isn't too late to change his ways, but his mana seed suddenly goes berserk. He realizes it's too late to turn back, and threatens to crush everyone with his pyramids, but Red summons his Kazuna Buster. Ydra tells everyone they must unite their feelings, and Azir attacks them with his pyramids. But they fire the buster, and the energy beam destroys everything in its path, but Azir refuses to give up, and turns into a sandstorm. He tells Rania to help him, but they realize that he's heading to the forest, and they think he's planning to wipe out the elves to consume their mana. Rania begs Red to save him, but he tells her he will also need her help, and he summons his Kazuna beasts, which merge into the Maximum Kaiser. Their energy reaches 100%, and they try to stop the sandstorm head-on. In another flashback, we see the members of the Kazuna Rangers in their headquarters, as Red asks everyone how they joined the group. So Blue reveals that his company invested in bond energy research, and he even allowed the researchers to study his bond soul. We learn that a bond soul produces more bond energy than usual, and the members of the Kazuna 5 were chosen because they have it. When the Break Fiends appeared, he spent all of his company's resources to create the Kazuna Bracers, but they only made 5, because bond souls were extremely rare. Blue reveals he was the first member of the Kazuna Rangers, and they pick Yellow as the second member, because they thought her background as a teacher was impressive. But they realized that she was a legendary ex-delinquent, who was notorious for beating people up. Green was recruited as the third member, because he proved his athletic ability by winning a game show. He mentions that it's an honor to be a part of the group, but Blue tells him to stop acting like he's in the military. We return to the present, as Red's friends wonder what's happening, but he tells them they need to work together, and fires the blaster to destroy the sandstorm. But it doesn't work, so he summons the Great Bond Sword, and uses it to create a tornado, which causes the sandstorm to disappear. But it suddenly appears again, so everyone realizes that it will just keep reforming even if they blow it apart. Ydra notes that every grain of sand must have a portion of Azir's mana, so the sandstorm will keep restoring itself even if they destroy it. Red thinks they need to separate Azir's essence from it, and she explains that they can pull them together with bond energy so that they can restore him to his original form. But they will need a source strong enough to draw him in, and Rania recalls that she wasn't able to help him when he was in pain, so she decides to do her best to save him. Ydra casts her reconstructive spell to gather Azir's bond energy, but her scepter starts to break as she realizes that she isn't strong enough to do it. But Red tells her he believes in her, and she notes that she loves him, so she doesn't want to let him down. He realizes that his bond soul is resonating because of the relationship he has with her, and she gets distracted hearing this. But the Kizuna scepter suddenly appears, as he explains that it was formed because of their bond. The Maximum Kaiser starts wielding it, and it causes the Kaiser to turn gold, as Red notes that they have unlimited power. Ydra uses it to cast her spell, and she realizes that she can use the Kaiser's energy like mana, so she's confident that their plan will work. She gathers Azir's essence, and Rania calls out to him, telling him she'll help him bear his frustration and despair, so she begs him to remember who he is. He returns to his original form, and tells her he's glad she didn't change. Everyone realizes it's over, so Teltina uses her privilege spell to eat the mana seed. After that, Azir apologizes to the elves because he caused trouble for all of them. They explain that Rania already told them everything, and they're upset because he tried to conquer their forest. But they agree with his goal, so they decide to help him create a new world where humans and demi-humans can coexist. Red and his friends are glad they made up, but Vidin isn't happy with the ending, so he attacks everyone with his lightning. He notes that he's disappointed in Azir because he couldn't defeat Red with his privilege spell. He asks Vidin what he's doing there, but he suddenly transforms into his true form and reveals that he's one of the Demon Queen's children. So everyone realizes he's a royal demon, and he tells them he will be getting rid of them so that he can revive the Demon Queen and marry her in the future. They become confused hearing this, and Red reminds him that the Demon Queen is his mother. But he doesn't care, telling them he wants to marry his mother, so they realize he's a weirdo. He claims that he's her favorite and explains that he had plans to resurrect her, but he realizes that he needs to take matters into his own hands. He continues to blast them with his lightning and reveals that he manipulated the Kuki workers so that they would kill Belga during the rebellion. He knew that Azir was hungry for power, so he gave him the seed after his father died. Azir becomes upset hearing this, and Red prepares to take him on, but he suddenly gets stabbed as Dobby appears. Vidin wonders if he's there to steal his accomplishment, but he explains that their greatest enemies have gathered there. He thinks it's the perfect opportunity to get rid of them, so Vidin decides to work with him. Rania wears her armor, and she charges in, but Vidin easily defeats her with his lightning. Ydra attacks with her ice spell, but Dobby destroys it, and Vidin mocks them, telling them they're weak because they're just humans. He attacks with Dobby, and everyone struggles against them, as Red realizes that his friends are losing. Ydra is about to get hit, but he protects her with his body, telling her he doesn't want to lose the bonds he made with them. He tells Mist to kill him if it comes down to it, and uses his black bond plate to transform. Dobby tries to stop him, but his blades are destroyed by dark bandages, which surround Red's body. He notes that he was hoping never to use this power again, and he gets consumed by darkness as he transforms into Kizuna Black. We return to Red's past, as the Kizuna 5 recalls when Pink joined their team. A break fiend appeared in the city, so they prepared to take it on, but they realized Pink already took care of them. Yellow recognizes her as one of her students, so she asks Pink what she's doing there, but she knows that Yellow is her teacher, and wonders what she's wearing. They decide to make Pink the 4th team member, and Red realizes that she ended up joining them without being chosen, but she reminds him that the same thing happened to him. He wonders how she can keep up with Yellow and Green, who are both athletic, because he thinks she's just an ordinary high schooler. So they tell him she's a prodigy, who was able to master fighting and shooting in no time. Blue recalls that she argued with Yellow, because they both wanted the pink suit, but Yellow notes that she decided to let Pink have it. Blue explains that he wanted to carefully select their 5th member, but Red ended up joining the team, even though he was a troublemaker. The professor reveals that the black bond plate allows Red to surpass his limit by tapping into his fear of being alone. but he warns him to be careful because his obsession over bonds can consume him and destroy everything around him, so he tells him to use it only as a last resort. Back in the present, the demons realize that Red has transformed, but they still think he doesn't stand a chance. Vidin summons a lightning bolt to attack him, but Red suddenly kicks him away, so Dobby rushes to help him, but Red smashes him to the ground. Vidin thinks he can't protect his friends while fighting, so he decides to target them. But Red protects them with his bandages, which act as lightning rods. They transform into rockets, and he refuses to let anyone mess with his bonds. In another flashback from 12 years ago, Red's parents tell him to get along with others, and he promises to make everyone his friend. But his parents die because of an accident with Truck-kun, and his relatives don't want to take him in because they can't afford to take care of him. So he ends up alone, and everyone thinks it would have been better if he had just joined his parents. We return to the present as Red launches his rockets, which explode as they hit Vidin. Dobby uses his explosive hands to attack him, but Red's bandages protect him, and the demons realize he got stronger after Vidin tried to kill his friends. They both use their ultimate skills, but he easily overpowers them, and they struggle to take him down. He continues to clash with them, and his friends realize he has the advantage, but Ydra notes that he appears to be in pain. He thinks about the people he lost, and he notes that he doesn't want to be alone again. He recalls the moment that the professor introduced him to Silver, and the Kazuna 5 thought she would become their new teammate, but she explains that she'll work alone, because she knows that she'll die if she joins them, revealing that she can see the future. The professor reveals that she reached out to him because she saw a vision of herself wearing the new model of the Kazuna bracer, which was developed in secrecy. She tells everyone she won't join the Kazuna 5, and as she walks away, Red's friends see that he's blushing, so they realize that he likes her. Silver completes her mission, but Red realizes she's hurt, so he tells her it's too dangerous to fight alone. He notes that her vision isn't set in stone because they have the power to change the future, and he invites her to join the team. She realizes he has a point, so she decides to fight by his side. But Red watches in horror as Silver is stabbed by a break fiend, who tells him he'll drain all of their bond energy. Red blames himself for everything because he convinced her to join the team, but she tells him she wasn't worried about her death and reveals that she decided to join them because she knew she was destined to save him. We return to the present as Red realizes that his loneliness left a huge wound on him, so he tried to cover it with bonds. But it won't stop bleeding, so he tried to forge more bonds, but they still aren't enough. He unleashes a devastating attack, which instantly destroys Vidin, but Dobby saves his head and tells him he almost died. He wants to continue the fight, but Dobby tells him he's in no condition to do so, and they escape through his portal. Red's friends realize he defeated the royal demons, but he suddenly loses control and starts destroying everything around him. Rania tells Azir to protect the elves, and she prepares to fight Red, while Ydra tells him to calm down. A bandage flies towards her, but Mist saves her, and he remembers what Red told him, thinking he needs to kill him to stop him. But Ydra notes that their bond with Red is the only thing that can stop him, thinking he should transform back after they remove his bond plate. Rania transforms into her falcon form, and she distracts Red, while Ydra casts her ice spell to freeze him. Mist uses his holy sword's 7th form to surround him with blades, and tries to remove Red's bracer, but he gets blown away by his dark energy. He thinks they should all attack Red at the same time, and tells Teltina to escape with the elves, so she summons Vicalis, who takes the elves to safety. Mist uses his holy sword to restrain Red, while Rania attacks with her spirit coffin, and Ydra summons her drill as she charges in. Red tries to stop them with his dark energy, but there's suddenly an explosion as they break through his barrier. Mist tells him it's over and surrounds him with his blades, but Red manages to stab him. He endures the pain and tells Red he won't kill him because he doesn't want to take orders from him. He removes Red's bracer, causing him to return to normal, and the girls rush to his side. Red later wakes up, and he apologizes for causing trouble for everyone, but Ydra tells him the royal demons would have destroyed everything if he hadn't fought them off. Mist notes that his shoulder injury will take a month to recover, but he doesn't blame Red, because he couldn't have protected Teltina without him. Red notes that he was alone when he entered the world, and he's glad that he now has friends, and he wishes for them to meet the other Rangers. We see Red's team in their headquarters, and they realize that the Kazuna beasts have been deployed over the last few months. Green finds it strange because the break fiends were defeated, and they know that Red has been summoning the beasts, so they realize he's still alive, and they become determined to bring him back. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.